Since I know I didn't upset enough of you with my faction tier list, today we're going to do my map tier list. We'll be rating these maps primarily on what I enjoy and what the maps have to offer, not necessarily things like performance. So if you like videos like this, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and leave a comment down below with everything you disagree with because I know you're going to anyway. In fact, I've even added the link for the template to the tier list that you can do on your own or with friends in the description of this video. And if you or your friend doesn't have a copy of Squad, you can get 30% off using my code SLAY3K30 at the link in the description below. First, we're going to start with Basrah, a beloved map that recently got redone completely in Unreal 5. It is certainly the most detailed map available in the game. There's even interiors that have detail, which is different from a lot of the maps you're going to see in Squad. It's got a very cinematic feel to it and offers a variety of different areas to play within, including industrial, urban, and some open spaces. Of course, there's also a river running down it that separates part of the map, creating some interesting challenges. And those challenges are similar to what you had in the old version of Basrah, that if you get caught in open areas, it can be devastating. Now, if it was the old Basrah, I'd have this a little bit lower on my tier list, but because it's the new Basrah, I'm going to actually move it up to B on my tier list, which some of you may think is low, but I think this is a great map. It's just not the map that I typically lean to playing, but I do think it sets a really high bar for future maps coming to Squad. Our second map is going to be Anvil, a map that I don't think gets played a ton. It offers some unique challenges with a river and ravine running through the middle of the map where most of your POIs exist, while the mountains surrounding this can contain their own firefights entirely, even spanning across the map itself. If your objectives are both on top of the mountains and in the lower portion of the map, it can feel a little disjointed. I do think the advanced and secure layer probably plays it best just running straight down the middle and using the mountains to more so supplement whatever happens in the ravine. I think some of the vehicle updates make this map a little bit easier to traverse, but this map can easily be dominated by the group strongest with armor hovering on those cliff sides. I've had some good fights on this map, but I've also had some really frustrating fights, especially with the terrain and the hills above. Playing objectives up there is just not fun. It needs some more cover, concealment, something to give you the ability to approach them without getting shot from miles away on armor just sitting near objectives, and that is why it's going to be a little bit lower on my tier list at C. Next up would be Balea, but unfortunately, that's rest in peace, so we're on to Black Coast. I've typically enjoyed most of my experience on Black Coast as it presents some interesting challenges with the river dividing objectives across the map pretty much in half. This map features one objective I just can't support, which is Chernikov Bridge. This has to go at some point. I really enjoy rain advance and secure fights on the western side of the map through Torpedo and Train Station. I do think Black Coast can force coordination amongst a team, especially when having to cross the river or push the other side of the map if you need to attack certain objectives. In fact, having a presence on both sides of the river pretty early can be a really key way to tackle how to handle this map. Black Coast also features an aquatic evasion layer that doesn't get played too often. I think another cool aspect of Black Coast is that one side of the river features a lot of hills and different terrain compared to the other side, which is more fields and flat land, while still maintaining some pretty cool POIs, but that's why Black Coast is going to sit at A on my tier list. Our next map is one of the smaller ones in Squad, and it's Chora. It's a very narrow map with tight lanes that often feels pretty competitive, and because of that, there's only one random advanced and secure layer with a few advanced and secure layers. Chora doesn't offer a lot of opportunities to flank or sneak past the enemy, and this map is not made for armor fights. In fact, it almost feels like it's not made for vehicles at all. I think the experience on Chora can often struggle because of bad decisions that your team can make, like bad rollouts, bad positioning, especially fob placement, because you can block opportunities to progress or play defense. I'd love to see an updated version of Chora where we get some new compounds and some better pathing, especially for vehicles and the roads and whatnot, but Chora just typically isn't a map that I seek out to play, and therefore it's going to sit at the C tier of my tier list. It's time to talk about Fallujah, a map that didn't always run very well in Unreal 4, just given its urban density. Similar with what we've talked about with regards to the new Basrah, this map has a lot of detail as well. I feel like people often love or hate Fallujah. There's not as much middle ground. It presents a lot of challenges for armor because of all the different sight lines and the ability for a ton of AT just to hang out in the buildings, waiting for armor to drive down some of these roads. I think the map can be very challenging for infantry, but it also offers advanced squad leaders a really good opportunity to kind of do some different things because there's plenty of buildings to operate within and around. I think generally I've tended to have pretty good games on Fallujah, but I don't always think it's a map I appreciated to the fullest. Maybe it's because this map is always the map that gets voted on at like midnight when everyone's too tired to really enjoy it for what it's supposed to be. I think the detail and the challenge that Fallujah offers makes it a good choice for B on my tier list. Let's talk about another smaller to medium-sized map called Fool's Road. This presents its own set of challenges. There's only one random advanced and secure layer that gives the southern team early notice on that lane, which can be frustrating. Frankly, I think the map is just better played in Advanced and Secure anyway. I think because it's a smaller map, the biggest challenge too can often be setting up fobs or moving vehicles in certain areas because you can hear them from so far away these days. But with Advanced and Secure, you're already going to be pushing objectives pretty early, meaning there's probably less roaming happening on this map given the size and the fact that you already know where objectives are. And you're going to be playing pretty tight to those POIs because there's not a lot of them. And while there's not a lot of POIs, you're also going to be playing within different heights because there's a bunch of hills across Fool's Road to help break up the map. You're also going to have a lot of valleys, especially with roads running through them, that makes it really tough on armor or vehicles. But as infantry, pushing up some of these hills can be really tough. It's pretty often that I wish there were more maps about the size of Fool's Road. I think it's great for more infantry-focused experience, kind of like playing within the boundaries of the old skirmish mode. I hope that one layer can see a balance tweak, but for now, I'm going to actually put Fool's Road at B on my tier list. Now we should discuss Goose Bay, a rather large map that offers diverse terrain and a wide spread of objectives. Instead of having something like a river dividing the map, you have the airfield, which plays almost dead in the center of the map, and it's a wide open area, leading for stalls and being able to attack this area because you're just completely exposed. And because of that, it often forces teams to play around the center of the map, not so much through the center, and there's plenty of lanes to operate within. You have a variety of objectives and different areas to play within, including factories, urban areas, villages, and of course the airfield. You also have coastal positions, which can narrow how teams can attack it. I tend to enjoy Goose Bay, especially when you have fights happening around drilling site, weather station, maybe research station, or on the flip side of that, military housing. Goose Bay is the only snow-covered map in Squad and is one of 2 North American maps. But overall, it's solid. I'm going to be placing that at B on my tier list. Another map that gives you a little bit of everything is Gorodok. You can find yourself fighting in forests, villages, or across fields. It's again divided by a river, and it creates similar challenges to something like Black Coast, but I think with less difficulty because the river is something you can traverse everywhere. I tend to like the balance in the layers that Gorodok has to offer, although I don't like the objective of lumber storage, nor do I like the fights that tend to happen between Hill 57 and Boars Hunters. Those can tend to stall. That being said, fights around Hilltop Bunker or Neva can tend to be pretty fun or intense. And that's right at the center of the map, which makes it really interesting. Because that means you can approach it from just about anywhere. And that's a great point of Goro, is that it has plenty to cover up some of those attacks or those lanes that you want to use to push enemy objectives. And with that, I think Goro supports a great balance of infantry play and armor play. I think Gorodok's pretty well balanced, offers a ton, and it is pretty high up on my list, making it to the S tier. Now we should dive into Harju, a map with plenty of diversity in how your team can accomplish some tasks or capture some objectives. Do you have to cross the bay mid-round, or do you have to push the city, or look to see who can attack and defend in the forest? There's plenty of challenges in both the terrain and the types of objectives. The urban city can turn into a grind, but so can the nearby forest. If you have the unfortunate power plant to customs office objective, which is another one similar to Chernikov Bridge that I kind of wish would go away, you might end up in just a long round of playing defense. But with Harju, you get a bunch of diversity in layers too. You have 2 random advanced and secure layers, you have 3 invasion layers, with 1 being an amphibious invasion, and 3 different AAS layers, with AAS2 potentially being my favorite because it's a fight over the airfield, condensing the map into a small, narrow lane. I've always enjoyed this map for what it has to offer, and I think it's going to sit at A on my tier list. Oh, Kamdesh. This map often feels kind of bland. There's a mix of some wide open areas that are difficult to traverse in vehicles, but there's also plenty of hills, slopes, some small villages, and windy roads, but none of which really feel that protected by anything that the environment has to offer. Many of the objectives feel kind of the same. There's just a bunch of small villages scattered across the map. And there's so many possible objectives on the one random advanced and secure layer that the map has to offer. Smart positioning and early map control tend to be key because you can see anybody approaching from pretty much any direction. There's just not a lot of places to hide, or there's just not a lot of good concealment for a push. Therefore, I think this map relies on something like mech infantry and quick movement, again, getting into positions early or trying to push positions with heavy support. If you're not in one of the villages, there's not a ton of great places to put habs, so you got to be mindful about your hab and radio placement as well. I'm going to be placing Kamdesh down at C on my tier list. Now we have to discuss Kohat, and we need to discuss it in the context that's more than just the map that probably kills the most server populations. If you're into building super fobs, this is probably a good choice for you. It offers a ton of hills and mountains for sightlines, plenty of toe shots, pending ammo supply. Infantry can often be left in wide open spaces getting picked off, especially if the other team is pushing objectives relatively quickly or early in the round. But it's pretty common for helicopters to have to deal with toe shots, armor to be fighting across mountains pretty far away from each other, and snipers to be aplenty, or you're just getting picked off on the way to literally anywhere. On the random advanced and secure layers, the objectives are pretty spread out, meaning you're going to have to cover a lot of ground, and that's not always easy on this map, especially going undetected. It's kind of funny. This is one of those maps when we started talking about Unreal 5 and the lack of distance fog that I was wondering, is maybe this the one map that might actually benefit from distance fog? I wonder if someone would make a community layer of this map that just took a portion of the map rather than the whole thing and see how that actually played out. But I'm not much of a super fob kind of guy, so Kohat is going to sit at D on my tier list. Now let's switch it up and talk about another small map in Kokan. It's made up of small villages surrounded by fields and connected by roads. The only concealment you have will be packs of bushes or just crawling through the fields themselves. And because of how open everything is, it's easy to end up in stalemates. Crossing field as infantry is a gamble, and there's not much armor on this map given the size. You're more reliant on light vehicles and maybe some emplacements to help attacks, hold points, or control how things just play out. That puts a lot of pressure on rollouts, which can be critical for early position. After that, it can slow down to a really slow burn, especially given the size, which also reduces the opportunity to flank. Rollout on this map typically requires pretty good map control to get in those villages and start taking up positions. I've had some good rounds on Kokan, but a lot of the rounds feel pretty similar to each other. I guess you could say that for a lot of the smaller maps, but for now, Kokan is going to go at the C tier on my tier list. Of course, we haven't escaped the hilly maps. There's Lashkar Valley, another map that seems to have the narrow passageway of a lot of the objectives down the center lane, however, are surrounded by pretty vast mountains. I will say that I tend to enjoy this map the most with something like Advanced and Secure version 2 of this map, where everything runs down that center lane, because sometimes the fights across the mountains just turns into a little bit of a long distance slugfest. While some of the more recent vehicle updates we've seen have improved the ability to navigate some of this terrain, it's still a little bit of a pain. It's just easy for fights on the east or west to turn into more defensive or tedious battles. Most tow operators will enjoy what they can snipe from the sky or on the ground. This is certainly one of those maps that can be very punishing for a team that does not try to take map control early. I'm going to be placing Lashkar Valley at C on my tier list. I think there are some opportunities for some really fun fights, but often it gets bogged down, especially when objectives are spread throughout some of the mountains. Now let's jump back to another small map, Logar Valley. It's a map that doesn't get seen too often in play. It's small and typically feels as though it's just one singular lane. And that's just because of the size of the map and the fact that everything's going to run through the village in between the two mains. It only has one advanced and secure and one random advanced and secure layer. But of course, this map just largely features infantry firefights. So while you can have some fun firefights within the village and the valley, you are always susceptible to whoever is elevated on the hills around you, and there's not a ton of place to put fobs. But that's mainly because you're going to be blocking out positions based on your exclusion radius for the radio. Now, the other thing too is that it's easy to kind of track what the enemy's doing because you can typically see movement coming out of the mains because they're on hills. And that can be a little bit frustrating, especially for less experienced teams. But Logar is not a map I typically jump to playing, so I'm going to put it on D on my tier list. Now let's hop over to another North American map, being Manicougan. This map has already seen a significant overhaul from what we remember from Manic. And I think that overhaul has contributed to this being one of the more frequently played maps. And it's got a good quantity of map layers, including 2 random advanced and secure layers, 2 invasion layers, and 3 advanced and secure layers. The only really thing that's off-putting about the layers is something like random advanced and secure 2 if the points or objectives do cross over the lake above the dam. Otherwise, the map features a variety of elevations. It does have a river running through that tends to divide the map in about 3 pieces, and a ton of different POIs to play within. Otherwise, I think Manicougan is a pretty solid map for squad. I enjoy the diversity in the layers and the challenges it offers. So it's going to go on the A tier of my tier list. It's time to talk about Mestia, a map that is certainly on the smaller category of maps in squad. Like many smaller maps, your rollout is so significant, especially the pace at which you get to certain POIs. Getting to about the middle of the map where there's a few towers up on an elevated position can be really detrimental to the other team. Once you take that middle portion, you can really control the flow of the game, and if you rush an early back cap for the opposing team, you're in really good shape for the rest of the round. I don't have overly strong opinions about Mestia, but I don't think it provides a ton of variety in how it can be played. And some of that's because there's a very limited number of objectives. I don't mind the occasional round of Mestia, but it's certainly not one of my favorite maps, so I'm going to put this at C on my tier list. Now we jump to Mutaha, maybe one of the more popular maps in squad, featuring a mix of dense urban area and open desert, which tends to create a barrier between some of the armor fights happening in the desert, while a lot of the infantry play is done in the interior of the map. While the river and the middle island can complicate some things, it's all traversable and pretty accessible. I think the layers for this map also complement it well. With Random Advanced and Secure 1, you're fighting across the map. With Random Advanced and Secure 2, you're fighting from north to south. You'll get a couple of AAS layers and 1 invasion layer and a territory control layer. Mutaha gets played pretty often, but I enjoy the challenges it offers, and it's going to go at the A tier of my tier list. Another urban map we should discuss is Narva, a map that's grown on me over time. It wasn't one that I used to seek out as often, now it's one that I really enjoy playing. It's almost entirely urban-based, divided by a train line that separates the north and the south. You can encounter close quarters combat or longer range fights, especially with access to some of the apartment buildings. Not too long ago, helicopters were added to the map that add another layer of potential for what can be done here. You're only going to get one random advanced and secure layer, 2 invasion layers, and 3 advanced and secure layers. But despite that, this map has enough objectives to spread teams across the map pretty effectively and give you enough variety in terms of what you're going to have to fight through or against that it doesn't feel as dull in replayability. Narva isn't quite as detailed or populated like Fallujah is, but there's still a fun opportunity for armor to play within this map as well. And with all that, Narva is going to be placed at the A tier of my tier list. Now it's time to talk about the Sanxian Islands. So while Basrah got a complete overhaul with Unreal 5, Sanxian Islands remains the newest map added from scratch. And it's a pretty detailed map, especially given its outdoor environments. This map was a pretty heavy lift for Offworld because it created new assets, and I thought this was going to be opening the door to more maps from that region. But with all that detail added to the environment and the biggest building I think in Squad dead in the middle of the map, this map saw some performance issues which didn't make it the most played. And it's worth noting that the restrictions on biomes for different factions also played into the lack of play for this map, and the fact that you really need to have amphibious vehicles to play this map to its full potential. And some of that's because the islands to the south are terribly difficult to traverse. And that becomes even more complex when there are objectives on these islands, and then tows get set up, and you're just getting picked off on the way there because it's wide open. Now you have a ton of diversity in the terrain, everything from small forests to industrial areas to small fishing villages, and of course the power plant. I've seen some fun fights happen across the northern part of the map, and it does offer some invasion opportunities, but I do think this map was released ahead of where Squad was, so it's going to go at the D tier of my tier list. Now let's talk about Skorpo, a map that's been in the game a long time, and the textures will remind you of that. It's one of, if not the largest map in the game. This map saw a nice glow up with Unreal 5. Its geography offers some difficult challenges and limiting lanes. However, if you plan to operate a small navy, this is your map. The hillside can become a difficult thing to try and attack or navigate via vehicles. There's so many sightlines for tows and armor that vehicle play can be a bit dull, or turn more into a sniper battle of vehicles. Despite being such a large map, there's only one random advanced and secure layer, which can feature some widely different challenges, either playing in the mountains or closer to the coast. I certainly prefer the coastal fights given the terrain. It still feels pretty narrow, but there are some options for how you can navigate this map that make it a little bit fun and diverse. With all that in mind, I'm going to be placing Skorpo at the C tier of my tier list. Now I think Sumari probably has the most playtime in seeding of any map ever. And frankly, it probably doesn't enter the rotation that much outside of seeding. Sumari is another pretty small map for Squad. It's going to feature primarily infantry fights. A lot of fun firefights can happen across the map. And as you already know, this is not a map for vehicles, but much like something like Chora, this is going to be a situation where teamwork is critical because bad decisions by your team in placing radios can seriously hamper your team's capabilities just because of the map's size. Don't get me wrong, Sumari can be fun on occasion, but if you're somebody that frequently seeds servers, you're probably bored of this map, which is not necessarily Sumari's fault because we just need more seed layers. And so Sumari's not going to be rated very high on my tier list. In fact, it's going to go with the D tier. Now we have to discuss one of the most armor-focused maps you can play on, which is Talil Outskirts. It features pockets of areas where infantry are typically going to play within around the hangars, while armor will typically play around these islands that infantry can live within, but often becomes limiting for infantry movement. There's only a couple random advanced and secure layers that offer some differences when it comes to lanes, but oftentimes infantry feels a little bit useless on this map. Mainly because getting from one cluster objective to another, you may be wide out in the open, susceptible to the armor at play. Additionally, the invasion layer more times than not has ended pretty quickly because it's pretty tough. And Gas Town is one of those objectives that's just on an island. I've seen this map turn into a lot of slow battles. I think it could use a refresh, something like more of the rolling dunes that you have in the new Basrah, to help give some concealment to vehicles that are trying to move around and ferry infantry. I did used to think the old tank layer that existed for Talil, I'm not sure if it still does, was a lot of fun, but otherwise I'm going to be putting Talil at the D tier of my tier list. Last but certainly not least, we have Yehkorivka. This is a pretty balanced map for both infantry and armor play. Most objectives are placed within small villages, also giving defensive teams plenty to work with, as well as giving attacking teams some coverage to be able to push into objectives. Not to mention all the tree lines, which typically provide great concealment for some of those attacks when you need to be a little bit further away from point. There's a couple objectives that can frustrate teams, sometimes playing on quarry or hilltop encampment. The whole eastern layer that can happen on Random Advanced and Secure version 2 also isn't the most fun. But when you're playing in some of the villages like Petrivka, Nova, or Stepney, that's when this map, I think, really does a pretty good job. And there's enough roads and tree lines to help have like a good connective tissue for both armor and infantry to move within to make attacking and defense a lot of fun. For me, this map goes up there with Gorodok. It is one of my favorite maps to play in squad, and so it'll be at the S tier of my tier list. And speaking of tier list, that completes it. The only thing I think I'm leaving out is Pacific Proving Grounds because I don't think I've ever played that in a public match. Now remember, this is not to be taken super seriously. This is more so maps that I enjoy playing than anything else. And of course, we're all going to have our own preferences, which is of course why you should use this template to do your own tier list, and it's available in the description of this video. With all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I hope it prompts some fun conversation. As always, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like on the video, drop a comment down below with your thoughts. Please keep them respectful, and of course, I will see you all next time.